Happy Advent!
That's right. It's time to repeat the only Advent song we all know, ad nauseum.
So today we wanted to talk a little bit about the way the world looks right now and where to go with that, basically. So here in America, we've got the elections, and if you pay too much attention to the news, no matter where you are politically, it's a mess.
It's uplifting, really.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of hope. No, it's just confusing and dim and bleak. And then don't even get me started on COVID, because we've been in the house too long. And I'd like to see the outside world again.
I don't think it actually exists.
Oh, they took it away, right?
They took it. That's what I feel like. I mean, everything's been sterilized and
right.
We'll do what we have to do, but it's getting
Yeah.
The term, what is it? COVID fatigue.
Yes.
That's
me. That's me.
Which is dangerous, right? Because people are wanting to kick off all the things that we need to do in order to be healthy. But it's like we're getting to the point where some of us are just giving out.
I'm just done. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are there. And I want to talk about just how to combat that a little bit, where to look in response to that, basically. Because it's easy, and I said this for myself as well, it's easy to look around and see mess, you know what I mean? And be like, oh yeah, that's a fallen world for sure. This is it. This is fallen. And think, this is hopeless. This is never going to work out well. We're done, basically. And I just want to talk about how to really respond to that faithfully as Catholics. So, first I want to start with the cardinal virtues.
Okay, so you want to hear something funny?
What?
Well, you already know this, so I don't know why you faithfully said what. But anyway.
You didn't prep me for what you were going to say funny.
So, I don't know about you all, but it really helps me to memorize things when I can tie it to like something, especially something odd or strange or like a little story. Yeah.
Please don't tell a weird story.
Actually, I'm not going to tell the weird story, but the cardinal virtues. I'm going to introduce these to you out of the Catechism, and then I'm going to help you by giving you a little device to help you to remember the cardinal virtues, and you'll never forget them ever again. Okay? So, paragraph 1805 speaks about the cardinal virtues, and this is going to play into our discussion about what Aaron was talking about, overcoming the times that we're in. So the four virtues, play a pivotal role and accordingly are called cardinal. All others are grouped around them. They are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Okay, so I thought I'd just briefly hit those four and we'll get a basic definition, run a definition, and then we'll go on. So prudence, number one, disposes practical reason to discern our true good in every circumstance and to choose the right means of achieving it. So we talk about that a lot, being prudent in your decision making. Yeah? Justice, in paragraph 1807, justice is the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give their due to God and neighbor. All right, so rendering unto another or to God what is theirs, rightfully theirs. Fortitude is the moral virtue that ensures firmness in difficulties and constancy in the pursuit of good. Unwavering, right? And then 1809, temperance is the moral virtue that moderates the attraction of pleasures and provides balance in the use of created goods. I think we all need a little balance right about now.
So, tell them your memorization device, and then we'll get into...
That's probably the linchpin of this entire episode, so don't roll your eyes at me. Okay, so I don't know what... Oh, actually, I do remember. I was reading through the Catechism, through this little reading plan, and I come across the four cardinal virtues, and for some reason I decided, I need to memorize these, which I think that's a good idea anyway, but I wasn't just going to be able to memorize these four without something to tie them together. So, so we have prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. So P, J, F, T. And I thought, okay, I'll take those first letters and I'll come up with a little something tied together. Okay. So imagine, if you will, here's the story. I'm going to tell it.
Please don't.
So imagine, if you will, someone is they're a very rich person and kind of uppity, and they come to this person who runs an inn or a hotel manager or something, and says, "Kind sir, where is the nicest room available? Could you please give it?" And he says, "No, ma'am, we're out of rooms. We can't, but we do have this nice fort over here." Okay. And this person continues to protest. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? Give me the best room." And finally, the hotel manager has enough. This is all going on in my head, by the way, so you know I'm a little weird. But anyway, so finally, the hotel manager has enough and says, Prudence, justice, fortitude, temporarily, temperance. So prude, calling this person a prude, which is probably not the most charitable thing to do, but hey, he's had enough. Okay. So prude, just fort temporarily. You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. So when he tells the story now, he says, uppity, wealthy person. Yeah. Well, when he tells me this story, he's like, yeah, I imagine you are trying to get a room, right? And I'm like, hey, prude, just fort temporarily. I'm the uppity person.
This is a professional podcast. We cannot be airing those things here.
Yeah.
Anyway. So you're never going to forget the 4 cardinal virtues. You're welcome. You might as well just shut off the podcast now. You're done.
But, so I want to go through those and just talk a little bit about they're cardinal virtues for a reason. Because, okay, so cardinal, right? Cardinus in Latin, it's like a hinge. It hinges on.
Everything else hinges on those things, right?
And so let's start with prude, right? I think this is so important in the world we're living in right now, because it's really easy to be like, I'm done with this. I'm over this. I don't want to do this anymore. And we need that prudence to make decisions that are healthy and wise and not imprudent, right? Like,
don't take your mask off and slingshot it.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you
That was what that was.
Okay.
I was unhooking it. You couldn't see it, listeners, but I was unhooking my mask and slingshotting it. Don't be that way. Don't be that.
Yeah,
person.
I mean, it's easy to say, I'm done. Like, I'm over this. I'm not going to follow these mandates anymore. I'm going buck wild. And I feel you after being stuck in the house with all these people. I understand that. But we can't do that. It's not prudent, okay? Moving down to justice. Okay. At the same time, that prudence and justice have to work hand in hand, right? We can't say, oh, well, it's not prudent to go to mass. And maybe, for some dioceses, they have stopped mass at the moment or whatever. But that is giving our due to God and neighbor. So some people might take this as an opportunity, say I can't go to mass or what have you. Well, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to just kind of put God to the side.
Mm-hmm. Check out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not being just in our faith, in our life. And it's easy to do that. And it's understandable to say, I'm just done with this. Like, God, you've obviously taken the back seat here. I'm going to too,
Well, it's also easy, too, then to not be just in our dealings with other people and
certainly
become turned in on yourself.
Yeah, because neighbor is a part of that justice, like our due to our neighbor, which is to be kind and to treat each person like they are Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the flip side of all of these, the extreme, the opposite of all these are the vices and ultimately sinful, right, actions. So becoming turned in on yourself, not being just to those around you and ultimately to God. The opposite of that is being turned in on yourself. Mm-hmm. What's that? Augustine says, incarvatus in se, turned in on oneself. It's basically what sin is.
Yeah, absolutely. Then moving down to fortitude, getting in the fort temporarily, right?
Just fort.
You're such a dork. Anyway, so fortitude, I think that's obvious. We all need fortitude right now to continue through this now almost year-long
I thought
process.
it was kind of a breeze for me.
Yeah, well, anyway.
She wanted to say some other things, but she decided not to.
I was being just to my neighbor. No, I think we all need fortitude. Constancy, it says, in the pursuit of the good.
Constancy. Yeah.
Constancy, like being consistent in what we do. It's difficult. And sometimes you're doing the same thing over and over every day in the same pair of pajama pants. And that's fine. Nobody's judging.
Maybe a little.
No, not at all. Anyway, moving on. Okay. Temperance. That's the moderation, right? That provides balance in the use of created goods. My goodness, don't we all need that? How many Zoom meetings have y'all been to? I mean,
you're on mute. Sally. No, Sally's the thing on the bottom left. Click it. Oh, just forget it. Somebody call her. You would think at this point in the pandemic we wouldn't have those people anymore.
Or the people that
would be me.
Or that are not on mute and they need to be.
Oh no, Aaron. I've had staff meetings like that.
Oh.
Like, I've got to be on this meeting, and then the rest of us, including the boss, like, because you don't want to be rude and be like, Sandra, you're off mute. But I mean, it's kind of an act of justice. To tell that person that they're off mute because you don't know what they might say.
Right. But at the same time, learning to temper maybe our reactions. That's not me, obviously.
Right.
Some people.
We eat and breathe temperance around here.
Yeah, right. It's a necessary thing. So that was my point with these cardinal virtues.
Well, even like with the temperance too, I agree exactly with what you're saying, but even too, the isolation can cause you to live, whether it's on an extreme like alcohol or whatever, you can be intemperate with a lot of things using the excuse, well, I mean, these are extraordinary circumstances and I'm locked up here with my family or I'm isolated by myself.
So I needed that 3-pound chunk of chocolate.
I know, right?
It's
hard. It's hard to practice temperance when the circumstances are radically different than they normally would be.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's easy to say, I'm coping. This is self-care, right? We hear that all the time. Self-love. Listen, nobody loves themselves with 3 bottles of wine.
Yeah. You're going to have to draw some borderlines.
Yeah. So I think that all those cardinal virtues are so important when we're going through this pandemic and everything in our world, when we look around and we're like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel. It's a mess out there. And what do you do? And a lot of the times, you see on Catholic social media even such polar opposite ideology, or I don't know how you want to put that, but
and even a lot of anger and vitriol spewing back and forth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. From both sides. And it's like, I don't know. And on top of that too, not only as Catholics, we have the pandemic and here in America, election mess. And then too, we have the McCarrick report that comes out. And we look at that and we're like, okay, the world's a mess, the country's a mess, and the church is a mess.
Yeah.
And how do you respond other than with Peter's words that, to whom shall we go, Lord? You alone hold the words of eternal life. Mm-hmm. If Christ established this, then even a mess, we have to cling to it. Mm-hmm. We have to trust that he established it, even in those difficult times. I think that's so important.
Well, and these 4 that we just outlined, it's a roadmap to holiness, right? Mm-hmm. And they're helpful too, I think. And I've not done the best of using them consciously. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, unconsciously or subconsciously, they've been working, right?
It's just a natural response for me.
It's for me. What would be the temperate thing to do here now? But when we come upon those difficult decisions, like what are we going to do next? Thinking about those 4, is a starting point, and going, what is the prudent thing to do here?
Yeah.
What is the just thing to do?
Yeah. Is my decision just to the people around me?
Mm-hmm.
Not just, being temperate, but is it just what I'm doing as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are my motives here? What am I? Yeah. So it helps you to kind of, it's a nice examination of conscience before you act. It's like, what are my motives here, and why am I doing this, and what it's going to be the plausible outcome if I do it. So
yeah. And I don't think that this falls at an insignificant time in the church's calendar, right? So last week we celebrated Christ the King Sunday. And that's the answer, really, when we're looking at how do we respond. That's it. The entire church calendar is set up in such a way. We start with Advent, right? And we continue, and we end with Christ the King Sunday. Now, we can all recognize that the highest feast of the church is Easter, but it's not unintentional by the church that it ends on Christ the King Sunday, because Christ is the King of the universe. All of this mess that we see is easy to get bogged down in, but Christ is the King of the universe. So no matter what we see here on earth, it, at the end of the day, ultimately does not matter, because we have an eternal outlook beyond this world and to Christ, to his eternal being and salvation through him. More than anything temporary on this earth, right? All of these situations that I've mentioned, while not unimportant, are temporary.
Yeah.
They're not eternal. And I think the most important thing we can do is keep an eternal outlook. And I think, too, that Satan wants to convince us that eternity is far away and unimportant with today's world. I need to focus on what is happening now. Satan wants you so bogged down in these things of the world that you keep your eyes off of Christ and his eternal plan for you and for the salvation of the world.
Mm-hmm. And he also doesn't want Christ then to illumine those things which you are dealing with right in the here and now, which, like we talked about, a couple weeks ago, are your legitimate pathway to salvation, or your pathway to sainthood.
Yeah.
Right? He wants you to keep you bogged down in them and distracted and thinking, well, this is not what the Lord wants, or this is just something that I'm bogged down and have to get through. When we pause and really take an assessment, no, this is, okay, I am where I am. I need to trust God. I need to maybe employ those 4 virtues and think about how I can live them, so that in the midst of this mess, right, we're bringing the kingdom to earth in our particular circumstances in life.
Yeah, exactly. The other event at this point in the liturgical calendar too is the beginning of Advent, right? The start of a new church year. And I think it's such an opportunity as a new year to take a new look, a fresh look on where you want this church year, this liturgical year to go, where you want to grow in, the same as we do at the new year with New Year's resolutions. Where can I go deeper with Christ through Advent? How can I wait for him more, prayerfully, or in what deeper way can I meet him and prepare myself for him this Advent season? And I don't think it's coincidental either. The first Sunday of Advent's gospel reading. Okay, so I'm going to read that from Mark 13:33 through 37. Be on guard, keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey, when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning. lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to you, I say to all, stay awake. So, like, it's said in there several times. Stay awake, keep awake. Like, hashtag stay woke, right? Like,
whoa, I'm the cheesy one. Okay.
But no, I it's not by accident that the church put this as the reading for Advent, but it's so perfect for this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to fall asleep, figuratively, right? Well, I don't know, for me, literally, too. Whatever.
Yeah.
Shut up. Anyway, it's so easy to fall asleep in our faith when we're fatigued by everything else. It feels like we just have burden on burden on burden on our shoulder. And I'm feeling, Peter in Gethsemane, like, I'm just trying to take a little nap, Lord. And he's like, no, stay awake. Stay with me. You don't know. You don't know what's coming. You just have to stay awake. And I think that's difficult, but it's necessary to stay awake with Christ, to stay cemented in relationship with him, even when it's not fun. It's third
it's
child meltdown of the day, and
it's kind of easy to be on guard, when things are going okay, right? Well, even then it might be difficult in a way, but and I've heard exactly what you were talking about even recently with some folks just saying, well, this has been a long year because of the pandemic, and so we just need to kind of take it easy maybe. And I think there's legitimate, I think there's legitimacy to that. We're all in our own difficult situations. Some folks have lost jobs. Some people have gone through all kinds of mess. But it should never become the case where so that's a good reason for us to kind of just lean back and not be attentive, right? And I don't have to watch as closely, Lord, because do you see everything that's going on around me right now?
My circumstances are bad, so I don't need to do that.
Right. So we all have to assess and see what is it that the Lord is calling us to. Maybe not all the same thing. Obviously, probably not all the same thing, but he is calling us to something. He is calling us to die to self and take up the cross and follow him. We just need to be listening and attentive to how he wants us to do that, because we don't want to kind of get, well, I've got this nice comfy routine, and then I'll just take a cat nap. And then, there you are, you're asleep. And so
then somebody wakes you up on the couch at 11:45 and is like, hey, go to bed. Oh, never mind.
Is that
different cat nap? No.
That was a lion nap. I don't know. That was a new thing.
Yeah, a lion. Anyway, it's difficult, but what's your other option, I guess, is my question. What, to continue to look at this world and be like, well, that's hopeless, and that's it.
And really, the world needs us to be those signs of contradiction. Right?
Yeah, that say, hey, there's hope in this, And
I'm going to fight, and I'm maybe not happy is not the word, but joy-filled, regardless of the circumstance.
Yeah,
peaceful. I've got joy. Right, I may not be happy all the time with a smile on the face, but I have an unshakable joy that causes me to look and act differently. And maybe you're taking on more difficult things during this pandemic when everybody else is like, "What are you doing? Why would you subject yourself to that when everything else is going on in the world?" But you do it out of joy, right? Out of your love for Christ and your desire to be obedient to Him and to shine a light to the rest of the world, who, and understandably so, are kind of carved in on themselves. Maybe not in a sinful way, but we're all kind of huddled in together.
Yeah.
And it's hard to look outside. It's hard to consider your neighbor. It's hard to think about what's the future holds when you're kind of holding on.
Right? Yeah. Barely hanging on to sanity. And,
So those of us who can, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, ought to be, this is the time. This is the time to stand up for the church. This is the time to stand up for the faith and to lead. Because if we don't lead, somebody else will.
Certainly. Yeah.
The world will. The culture will. The culture will take the lead
and
tell us where we're going to go.
The way we already see it going. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so not somebody y'all want to follow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All that I think that pretty much wraps it up. But just hopefully this Advent we can move together, working with Christ, coming closer to Him, and preparing our hearts, minds, souls for His birth on earth and in our hearts.
Yeah. All right. So until next time, happy Advent.
Yeah.
See you next time on the BaptiCatholic Show.